Hi guys, this is the Whispers of the Wind. I know I haven't uploaded a video in a long time. I'm really sorry for that. But I'm going to make it up to you by putting this nice story. So today I'm going to read to you Greek mythology, which is personally one of my favorite myths. They include lots of gods. They really know how to use myths in the way of a lot of fantasy, but there's a lot of war, there's also a lot of gore, and it's very, very intriguing because there's just so much weirdness. We have nothing of this in our modern world, so it's a bit strange to us, but it's also very interesting. So I'm going to read to you. So I've decided I'm going to read one story because one story is enough. It's going to last about 15 minutes. So I'm going to read to you Ortheus and Euridice. So, hope you can see that okay. I still don't have a mic, guys, so it might not be the best quality of sound, and for that I'm really sorry. But I hope you will still enjoy it. So, Orpheus and Euridice, page 29. Pages make really nice sounds too. Here it is. There are also very, very beautiful illustrations in this book. So after I read you the story, I will show you the images. And also summarize it because it is a bit confusing sometimes if you don't know the terms. And if you just don't understand who is who, I'm going to summarize it for you anyway. So don't worry if you don't understand, because I'm going to summarize it in simpler forms, and I'll explain what each thing is. So, let me start. Orpheus was the son of a king and the muse Calliope. The god Apollo gave him a lyre, and the muses taught him to play and sing. His voice was so sweet that he could enchant the birds and beasts, and all nature delighted in his music. Wild cats and wolves came out of their lairs to hear him. Mountain goats sprang down from the heights, trees bowed their heads as he passed, and even rocks moved their places. Orpheus lived in Thrace, a land of high snow-topped mountains, forests, and waterfalls. Every river, every stream, every tree and cave had its nymph, the spirit and guardian of the place. One day, as Orpheus sat playing his lyre between the oak tree, he looked up into the leaves and saw a nymph sitting on a branch high above him in the damp old shade. Her feet were bare and her long hair was braided with oak leaves, and she smiled as she watched and listened to him. When he called to her, she came down. She told him her name was Euridice. Orpheus fell in love with her, and after that first meeting, he came every day to her tree to sing to win her love. When Orpheus and Euridice were married, the nymphs of the river and forests danced at their wedding, and all nature rejoiced in their happiness. But Eurydice was so beautiful that other men desired her. One day she was walking by the riverside when she was waylaid by the god Aristaeus. Aristaeus tried to seize Eurydice, but she escaped him and fled through the meadows. It was summertime, and the grass was long, and as she ran, Eurydice stepped on a snake, which reared up and bit her. At once she collapsed. She felt the deadly venom flowing through her veins, and cried out, and the nymphs of the forest heard her, and called her name. Their cries passed from one to another, "Eurydice is dying, dying!" and all the hills echoed with their walls. Orpheus heard them and raced to the meadow. By the time he reached her, Eurydice was dead. Orpheus was inconsolable. He vowed he could not live without Eurydice, and would go to the underworld and fetch her back. But to reach the underworld, he must first cross 4 great rivers. The last of these was the Styx, which was guarded by Charon, the ferryman. Only the dead could cross the Styx. But Orpheus sang and played, and his music charmed the ferryman and melted his heart. He rowed Orpheus across the river to the gates of the underworld. Here Orpheus came upon the 3-headed dog, Cerberus, who growled and barred his way. But again he played his lyre and sang, and the savage dog was enchanted and laid down and let him pass. And so Orpheus entered the mouth of the cave that led to the underworld. The warmth and the light of the sun were cut off, and he felt a deep cold. All around him was darkness, the howling of the spirits in torment, and the fierce yells of demons. Furies appeared, with hair of riveted snakes, but Orpheus subdued them all with his music. As he played and sang of his love for Eurydice, the sad shadows of the dead, unnumbered souls rose up and pressed close around him. Warriors and women, little children, kings and shepherds, all enchanted by his music. And so the deep caverns of the underworld Orpheus came singing, surrounded by the shadowy dead and the enchanted demons, into the great hall where Hades, the king of the dead, sat with his queen, Persephone. When Orpheus told of his love for Eurydice, Persephone wept. She remembered the world of sunlight above, and begged her husband to let Eurydice return. Hades agreed, but on one condition. "Eurydice will follow you out of the underworld," he said, "but you must not look back, or speak to her, until you are both once more in the world of men." Orpheus was overjoyed. He looked about him, hoping to see among the shades who thronged the hall. But Persephone said, "She will follow you. You will not see Eurydice until you return to the sunlight." So Orpheus began the journey back to the light. The way was long and lonely. Hades had promised him that Eurydice would follow, but he heard no sound of anyone behind. Sometimes, as he climbed on and upwards, he stopped and listened for her. Perhaps he thought he could hear the rustle of her robe, or a soft breath, or the light tread of her feet. But all he heard was his own breathing, and when he moved again, his own footsteps. A whisper of doubt entered his mind. Had the gods deceived him? But perhaps she was too far behind for him to hear her, he thought, and he moved on, trying to believe that his beloved wife was with him in the shadows, stepping in his footsteps. At last, light began to penetrate, a grayish light that showed Orpheus the clustering shades of the dead, the stones under his feet, the rugged walls on either side. A faint, sweet air came from the far ahead, the breath of summer. Soon he would enter the world of the living. But was Eurydice behind him? He could not bear to return alone. He listened again. Nothing. "Oh, speak to me, Eurydice," he thought. "Make some sound so that I know you are there." He began to fear that Hades had deceived him, that he was the victim of a cruel trick. The urge to turn around and look was almost overwhelming, but he went on, up into the air that smelt of thyme and pine resin, where the shades of the dead faded away, and he saw ahead of him, framed the cave of the entrance, the bright world of men. As he reached that divide, and the warmth of the sun received him, He could bear it no longer. He was overcome with the fear that she was not there, that the invisible barrier between the two worlds would separate them. He glanced over his shoulder, and Eurydice was there, fair and full of light. Her sweet face, smiling lips, flowing hair, the joy in her face as she approached the light. And then, in the next instant, all color vanished. Her skin turned ashen, and it seemed that some great force was pulling her back, away from him. He cried out in terror, "Eurydice!" And the nymph wailed, "Oh, Orpheus, what have you done? You have lost me. The fates call me back. Take my hand, Eurydice. I cannot see. All is dark, dark." She stretched out her hands, and he almost reached them, almost touched her, before the dark power triumphed. He saw her eyes closed, her arms fall limp, her body fade to a shadow and disappear like smoke. "Eurydice!" he cried again, and in the caverns of the underworld the echo of her name mocked him as it died away. Now Orpheus knew the full force of his folly and his lack of faith. He rushed forward, and would have followed Eurydice straight back to the underworld, but Charon stood across the way, and this time no pleading, no music that Orpheus could play would soften the guardian's heart. Then Orpheus knew that he had lost Eurydice forever. He felt the forest where he had lived with her and went north to the cold mountains. For years he played his lyre and sang in the icy caverns and wept for his lost wife. Many nymphs offered him their love, but he would have no other. He never again looked at another woman, and because of this the wild women of Thrace were insulted and angry, for they thought his grief had gone on for too long. His end came one night, when they pursued and killed him, and tore him to pieces, and scattered his body across the land. But the Muses mourned for him. They gathered his remains and buried them below Mount Olympus, in a place where nightingales sang over his grave. So I hope you enjoyed that story. Now I'm just going to summarize it for you, and also show you the pictures. So basically, I'm going to guess which words you probably didn't understand. So, a lyre is this. So, it actually shows you in the picture. So, if you can see what the man is holding, that is a lyre. It's basically a bit like a harp, but it's a bit smaller, and it has a lower pitch. Not a lot of people play the lyre anymore because it became extinct. Well, no one played it for a while until it was found again by some explorers. So people that work for the museum found it. I can't say the word, sorry. I don't know. Some orpheologists, I don't know. Same people who found the pyramids and stuff. Same people who found the tombs and the treasures. So, yeah, they found the lyre. Okay, so a nymph. That's another complicated thing. Nymphs, imagine a tree. For example, if a tree is actually a nymph, so nymphs are very beautiful women who were the spirit of an object. So instead of water, there'd be a water nymph. So they could transform into these beautiful figures of women, but they were just the spirit of that thing, so that's what they actually were. And Eurydice was a nymph of a tree, so that was a spirit. And that's Eurydice here, the one sitting down with the leaves in her hair. She's really beautiful because she's got, I really like how they represented it. She's got really long, silky hair. Okay, so summarize the story. So, since Eurydice, I think you understand that part, guys pursued her, and the man pursued her, and she had to run away from him because she didn't want to deceive her husband. She stepped on a snake, while she was trying to run away from him. And when the snake bit her, she died. And Orpheus found out. Orpheus found out, and he vowed that he would save her and bring her back to the world. So he crossed many rivers, and then he went to the Styx. The Styx could only be passed by the dead, so when you died, you could pass. And a man who made you able to sail over this river, cross the river, was a man called Charon, and Charon could only let the dead. So when Orpheus found this out, he played his music, which made Charon give in to the sound, the beauty of it, because Orpheus's music was so beautiful. So then, yeah, the three dogs is not that important because it's not a thing. When you reach there, the spirits of the dead were touched by Orpheus's love for Euridice, that his playing. When you finally reached Hades' lair, and Hades is basically the god of the underworld, so he's the god of the dead. He controls the death, and he controls the dead. So you would imagine he's a bit cold. So yeah, he was the king of the dead, and also the queen, Persephone. Now, there's another story for this. Persephone used to be the daughter of a goddess, Demeter. She was the goddess of the earth. Yeah, pretty important. Basically, Hades had married her because she had to marry. It was an arranged marriage. She ate some food from the underworld, therefore she could not go. Therefore she married Hades. So now she was Hades' wife. In 6 months she has to spend in the underworld, and 6 months she spends with her mother. So that's why it says she missed the light, and that's why she felt sorry for Orpheus. And she begged her husband, and basically her husband just said, Hades said that, fine, you can take her back as long as you don't look back, as long as you don't look to her. Otherwise she will be lost. You cannot find her anymore. So he cannot look back until he reaches the world of men. So he did this, and as he climbed up to the world of man, he began to doubt. Orpheus began to doubt, and he was scared that she was not with him. And when he finally reached, he wasn't quite there yet, but he was almost there. He was at the barrier. He looked back, and she was gone forever. So, and he grew very depressed because he knew that he could no longer go back and find her. And so he was very depressed, and he just went up to the mountains. Nymphs offered her his love, but he didn't want to marry them. The women from his land were very offended because he did not want to look at them. He did not love them, and so they killed him. And they ripped him to pieces, which is a bit disgusting, but they did that usually at that time. They ripped him to pieces, threw them over the land. But the nymphs had collected the parts, his body, and buried him under Mount Olympus, which is where the gods live. Mount Olympus is where the gods live. And yeah, so that's basically the story, summary of it. Now I'm going to show you the really nice pictures. So yeah, I showed you that one. Okay. So here we have Orpheus playing his lyre to Charon, who is crossing him over the river. It's really beautiful how they do the trees with texture. Here are the Cerberus, the dog, the three-headed dog, with snakes for his tail. It's quite interesting. So And I love this picture because I love how they did the dead. I love how they made this grey, shadowy thing. And silhouettes. I really like silhouettes. I find it very beautiful and simple. It doesn't need to be complicated. Here you can see the little children. You can also see shepherds, the warriors. You can see all of them. It's very beautiful. It's a very sad story. So here is Orpheus looking back at her, and you can see that he's almost in the light, but he looks back, and you can see that she is being pulled backwards into the underworld, and it's very sad. Last page, there's no photo. So I hope you enjoyed that story. Yeah, that's the only one I'm reading for you today, but of course I'm going to read to you other ones after. But don't worry. So, okay, so I'm just going to turn back. So I hope you enjoyed that story. Next time I am going to read. I'm trying to read one from each section. So the first section is Earth, the Heavens, and the Underworld, which is one story that I read from you. The second one is Monsters and Heroes, which is a very interesting section. And I'm going to read to you Perseus and the Gorgon, which is quite a famous story. A lot of you people know this that studied Latin, because you have to read mythology. It's the only bit I like, actually. And then the last section is Gods and Mortals, so the relationship between them. The difference between a god and a mortal: a god is immortal, that means he never dies, and he has powers. A mortal is basically someone who is mortal, so he will die, and he has no special powers. But there are some demigods, so people who are demigods are usually half human, half god, and they do have special powers, but sadly they are not immortal, so they will die one day. So that's the definition of it, I think. So for this one, I was thinking of reading to you, well, there's a lot of really nice stories. There's King Minos and the Golden Touch, which is a very simple and nice story. I think I'm going to read to you that one, or I will read to you Echo and the Chrysis. That's more complicated, so I don't know. I think I'm going to read you King Minos and the Golden Touch. So, next video, which I'm going to probably do tomorrow or after tomorrow. So these are my last 3 videos, guys. Unless I upload more videos, but I really doubt I have the time. But if I do, I will. But these are my last 3 videos. This last 2 videos, so yeah, I'm going to basically be doing the same process for each of these stories. Then please comment and ask me what other things you want me to do, and I will try and do them for you. So see you guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye.